Welcome back to Coffeesodes, everyone. It's episode 34.
Oh, wow.
And we're going to do a deep dive today into some research on something that you might not expect, the predictability of football.
Okay.
I'm Josh, and with me today is Kelly, and we're going to be looking at some really interesting research. You can find more details about the research in the episode description.
Yeah, it's a fascinating topic, one that most fans probably wouldn't think of immediately.
Exactly.
When they think about football.
Yeah. So let's dive right into this research paper.
Okay.
The title itself is pretty thought-provoking.
Yeah.
Football is becoming more predictable. Network analysis of 88,000 matches in 11 major leagues.
Wow.
I mean, right off the bat, it makes you wonder if the sport is losing some of its excitement.
I think that is a question a lot of fans have, even if they haven't really articulated it yet.
Yeah.
Because the thrill of the unknown is part of what makes sports so compelling.
Yeah. And if you can easily predict who's going to win every single match, it makes you wonder about the future of the game.
Absolutely. So how did these researchers actually go about measuring predictability?
Yeah.
It seems like a pretty complex thing to quantify.
It is a complex thing, and they used a method called minimalist network science.
Okay.
Which sounds complicated.
Yeah, it does.
But it's actually quite elegant.
Okay.
So essentially, they treated each team as a node in a network and analyzed the connections between them based on the results of 88,000 matches across 11 major European leagues.
Wow.
From 1993 to 2019.
Wow, 88,000 matches.
Yeah, it's a huge data set.
That's incredible.
It is. But what's really clever about their approach is that they kept their prediction model very simple.
Okay.
So by using a really limited set of data points and focusing on the network structure, they were able to compare trends across different leagues and time periods in a very robust way.
That makes sense. So they didn't get bogged down in all the little details of each match.
They took a broader view.
Exactly, a big picture view.
So what did this big picture analysis reveal?
Well, their findings confirm the idea that football is indeed becoming more predictable.
Okay.
Especially in wealthier leagues.
Interesting.
Like England, Germany, Spain, and Portugal.
Okay.
And what they found is that the gap between the top teams and the rest is widening.
So it's becoming more likely that the traditional powerhouse teams are going to continue to dominate.
It seems that way.
Does this mean that the underdog stories that we love so much in football are becoming less common?
That's one interpretation, and the researchers actually use the term gentrification of football.
Gentrification.
Yeah.
That's usually used to describe neighborhoods, isn't it?
It is, and I think it's a really powerful analogy here.
Yeah.
So just like in gentrifying neighborhoods, we're seeing a concentration of wealth and resources at the top of football.
Okay.
So the richer clubs, the ones who consistently win, they get even richer, which allows them to attract even better players, which further solidifies their position at the top.
It's
self-perpetuating.
Self-perpetuating cycle.
Exactly. And this has consequences for competitive balance.
Right. Yeah.
If the same teams are winning year after year, it raises concerns about whether the playing field is really level.
And does their research touch upon why this is happening?
Yeah.
Like, is it just about money, or are there other factors at play?
Money certainly plays a significant role.
Yeah.
But there are other interesting trends that are highlighted in the research, too.
Okay.
One of the most fascinating findings is that home field advantage is declining.
Really?
Across all the leagues they studied.
I always thought playing at your home turf was a significant advantage.
You would think.
What's causing that to change?
It seems to be a combination of factors.
Okay.
Traditionally, home field advantage comes from things like the support of the home crowd, familiarity with the pitch, and even potentially referee bias.
Right. All those make sense. So are those things just becoming less important?
It seems so.
Wow.
The research suggests that some of those factors, particularly the ones related to territoriality, are weakening. Football is becoming increasingly globalized.
Okay.
So you have more foreign players and coaches.
Right.
Teams are traveling more frequently.
Yeah.
This means there's less of that strong home turf attachment than there used to be.
So in a sense, the game is becoming less local.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And this decline in home field advantage is a really striking example of how globalization is impacting even the seemingly local traditions of sport.
It definitely adds another layer to the whole predictability discussion, too.
Yeah.
If even home field advantage is becoming less significant, it stands to reason that the strongest teams are just going to dominate even more.
Exactly. It all feeds into this bigger picture of how football is evolving
Right.
and what it means for the future of the game.
Okay, this is fascinating. I think we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
We talked about the increasing predictability of football, the widening gap between the top teams and the rest,
Yes.
and now this intriguing decline in home field advantage.
Yeah.
Where do we go from here?
Well,
What are the broader implications of these findings?
that's a great question, and it's one that we'll explore further in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay.
Because what's really interesting is that these trends in football seem to mirror some pretty significant societal trends as well.
I'm really curious to hear more about that.
Yeah.
Listeners, stay tuned because in part 2, we'll be unpacking those connections between football,
Yes.
globalization, and even broader social and economic trends.
Absolutely.
This is where things get really interesting.
So we've been talking about how football is becoming more predictable, but what's really fascinating is that this trend isn't limited to the sport itself.
Okay, you've definitely piqued my curiosity. What do you mean by that?
Well, think about that concept of gentrification
Okay.
that the researchers use to describe the growing gap between the top teams and the rest.
Right, the idea that the richest clubs are getting richer and further solidifying their dominance.
Exactly, and this concentration of wealth and resources at the top
Yeah.
is something that we see in so many areas of society, not just in football.
Right.
It makes you wonder if those same forces that are driving inequality in society are also influencing the dynamics of the sport.
So you're saying that the increasing predictability of football could be seen as a reflection of broader societal trends towards inequality.
That's one interpretation.
Wow.
And it's a thought-provoking one.
Yeah, it is.
If those same patterns are playing out in both sports and society, it raises questions about the role of money and power in shaping outcomes.
It definitely makes you think. And we also touched on the decline in home field advantage.
Yeah.
How does that fit into this bigger picture?
I think the fading influence of home field advantage can be seen as another symptom of globalization.
Okay.
So as football becomes more international with players and teams constantly crossing borders, those local territorial advantages naturally start to diminish.
So it's not just about the money, it's also about the changing landscape of the sport itself.
Precisely, and this globalization trend
Yeah.
has parallels in other areas of culture and entertainment as well.
Okay.
Think about the global dominance of streaming services like Netflix or Spotify.
Right.
They've created a much more uniform cultural landscape where everyone has access to the same content.
That's true.
If
You'd be
it-
sitting at a coffee shop in Paris listening to the same music as someone in Tokyo.
Exactly. And while that has its benefits in terms of cultural exchange and exposure to new ideas,
Right.
it also raises questions about the preservation of local traditions and the unique character of different regions.
It's like there's this tension between the homogenizing forces of globalization and the desire to maintain local identity and distinctiveness.
Absolutely. And football is right at the heart of that tension.
Yeah.
It's this global sport with these incredibly passionate local fan bases. And finding that balance between those two dimensions, I think, is going to be increasingly important in the years to come.
It seems like this research on football predictability has really opened up a whole can of worms.
It has.
We're now talking about globalization, cultural homogenization, even the role of money and power in shaping society.
It's amazing how a seemingly simple question
I know.
about whether football is becoming more predictable
Yeah.
can lead to these much larger conversations.
It really is. It highlights how sports can act as this microcosm of society, reflecting the trends and challenges that we face in the wider world.
And I think that's part of what makes this research so compelling. It's not just about understanding football, it's about understanding ourselves and the forces that shape our lives.
Well said. So we've talked about money, globalization, and their impact on the game.
Yeah.
But what about technology?
Uh-huh.
It seems like that has to be playing a role in all of this too.
Absolutely. Technology is a huge factor.
Yeah.
And it's one that's only going to become more significant in the future of football.
All right, listeners, you've heard it here first in part 3 of our deep dive. We'll be exploring that exciting and sometimes complex intersection of technology and football.
Yeah.
Don't touch that dial. Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into football. And I'm so eager to talk about the elephant in the room, or should I say the algorithm on the pitch.
I like the algorithm on the pitch.
We've discussed money and globalization's influence on football, but technology just feels like it's changing the game faster than ever before.
It absolutely is. And one area where technology is having a profound impact is in player performance analysis.
Okay.
We're now able to collect and analyze data on virtually every aspect of a player's performance.
So it's not just about scouting talent anymore. It's about understanding their strengths, weaknesses, and even predicting their potential.
Exactly. Teams are using these really sophisticated sensors and tracking systems to capture massive amounts of data.
Wow.
On everything from a player's speed and distance covered to their passing accuracy, shot velocity, and even their heart rate variability.
It's mind-boggling to think about how much data is being generated during a single match. What do teams actually do with all this information?
Well, it's being used in a variety of ways. Coaches and trainers can use the data to tailor individualized training programs for each player,
Okay.
focusing on their specific needs and areas for improvement.
So it's like having a personalized fitness and skills coach for every player on the team.
That's a great way to put it. And data analysis isn't limited to individual players either.
Okay.
Teams can analyze patterns of play, identify tactical weaknesses, and even simulate different game scenarios to prepare for their opponents.
It's like taking the strategy room to a whole new level.
Exactly. And this data-driven approach to football isn't limited to the professional level.
Oh, wow.
Youth academies and amateur clubs are increasingly adopting these technologies as well.
So the future of football is all about data algorithms and simulations.
I wouldn't say it's all about those things, but they're certainly playing a larger and larger role. And it's not just about what happens on the pitch either. Technology is also changing how we consume and interact with the sport as well.
You're right. Think about fantasy football.
Exactly.
It's become such a phenomenon, and it's entirely driven by data and technology.
Exactly. And then there's sports betting, which is being revolutionized by algorithms that analyze match data and generate real-time odds. Technology is creating all these new ways for fans to engage with the sport on a much deeper level.
Yeah, it's incredible to think about how much has changed in just a few years. But with all these advancements, do you ever worry about technology taking away from the human element of the game?
It's a valid concern. I think it's important to remember that technology should be a tool to enhance the game, not to replace the skills, the passion, and the unpredictable brilliance of the players.
Well said. So as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of football, what are some of the key takeaways you'd like listeners to ponder?
I think the main message here is that football is in a state of constant evolution. Money, globalization, and technology are all shaping the game in these really profound ways, creating both opportunities and challenges.
And as fans, it's important to be aware of these trends and to really engage in thoughtful conversations about what we want the future of football to look like.
Absolutely, because ultimately football is a sport for the people, and its future should be shaped by those who love it the most.
Well said, Kelly. This has been a truly fascinating exploration. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and expertise with us.
It's been my pleasure, Josh.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the ever-changing world of football. We hope this conversation has sparked your curiosity and given you some new perspectives on the beautiful game. Until next time, stay caffeinated and keep exploring.